got a couple of updates to share with you all since the last time that we've met. It's been quite an adventure, if I may say so myself, filled with highs and lows, super high highs, super low lows, as is expected of human life and being divine beings here in this human life. I'm really grateful for everyone who kept in touch and asked me to return to this platform. And for those who have kept up with me on other platforms and social media, you can probably attest to the many adventures that I've aligned with and we've aligned with as individuals and a collective, a community. So since the last time you've seen me, I've opened and am temporarily closing a dungeon, a body studio, Dark Haven ATL. I've gotten married. I realigned with my life's work, which is this and these hands, the spirit work that I do, as well as the non kinky. I'm a healer. I happen to be a BDSM practitioner, but at the end of the day, and if you've ever listened to me speak, it's somatics, it's healing, it's embodiment, it's pleasure practice. Speaking of pleasure, I am kind of building a religion. Not a religion, it's more like an anti-religion or a tradition of pleasurism. And Mondays are my holy days of rest and pleasure. And it's not that I hate Mondays. I hate what society has done to Mondays and the anxiety and the stress and the violence that can occur from just starting a work week in the capitalistic society, right? So I opt out of Mondays, and I will be sharing more about pleasurism over this season and online. And if you follow me on social media, you've probably seen a few hints when I drop my mood boards, which are kind of like a little journal diary via memes, if you're not familiar. So I've returned to school. I am still in pursuit of my master's. I have a year left of my bachelor's, and I will continue on to postgraduate studies. And being a sexologist is still my practice and what I aspire to do in a more legal and academically recognized way, if you will. So I've also been participating in some projects. One of those is the Sexploration Project, headed by um, people at VCU, Virginia Commonwealth University. And that has been, I think we're in our second year of gathering and being in a steering committee that is doing the real work of raising awareness on all types of sexuality. On that panel, we have asexual people, we have intersex people, we have older bodied people who are typically like discounted when we talk about sex, and a lot of other people from walks of lives and POC and non-POC and just allies who are sexperts and who desire to bring this work to the public. So people look out for sexology, or excuse me, for the Sexploration Project. You can find them online as well, and I will likely drop some of those links in the description of this podcast so that you can do your own research and due diligence and be a part. They are also looking for more people to facilitate, and we hold panels. I hosted a panel with them on sex and religion and spirituality and grieving, and it was a beautiful experience, to say the least. Like this work is hella expansive, and as I expand my consciousness and bring awareness to different rooms where BDSM was typically looked at as a deviant practice. It's really good to see it being viewed as therapeutic and somatic body work. So that's really important to me, and I'm excited to be in a timeline that aligns with these things being looked at from a more compassionate and intellectual standpoint. So I've also participated in what's becoming a book, but it's a study led by the head of religious studies at UCR, California, um, on BDSM and spirituality or religion. And I sat for about 5 hours and demoed a divine kink um, a kink scene with sound bowls and shibari with my wife, Goddess Mo. And we, alongside my slave, you know, shared our spiritual practices, how they intersect with our BDSM and our sexuality. And that in itself was just pretty amazing. So I will share some of the photos that were captured. And it's, to my understanding, like a 10-year project due to, timeline of people, collecting research and individual interviews. And yeah, it's just fucking awesome, to say the least. I still do body work occasionally. I need to make myself more available for that because I really love connecting with people, and hoeing is sacred hoeing, or any kind of hoeing is fun, to say the least. For me, anyway, the ways that I do it, it's not my body being exploited. It's me leading people to themselves via body work and touch and play and BDSM and kink and fetish. So I see a, a more accepting timeline emerging, and I'm grateful to have been here for the journey to see it come from like some dark and dirty, you know, deviant practices to a more celebrated and understood lifestyle. So I love sex work. I love connecting with people and helping them heal. That's the number one thing. Like, if you're participating or not in intentional healing, like, these practices are still healing. Like, getting a spanking is very much grounding, whether you are aware of it or not. And that's why we have subspace, right? And top space. And while we can zone out and experience cathartic release and closeness and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, I still love my teas, and nothing about that will change. I think it's just part of who I am. So this season we have a more clear mission and understanding of our goals for the show, doing what we've always done, but with a more unique focus on the intersection of diversity of human sexuality. And we've got some juicy interviews coming up this season from experts in the field, practitioners, and pioneers. I am really blessed to be in a legendary upline headed by our matriarch, Lady D. Harrison, who was the the first owner of a space that would later become 1763 in Atlanta here. They recently closed down, but Lady D kind of sparked the Black led community as far as I'm concerned. And I may be a little biased, but fact check, and all due credit to her, ma'am, Mama Vi, and people who have come before her and taught and spread the word and made these spaces reckon with Black presence, and kind of kicked in the door for people like myself, other Black kinksters and practitioners, and other POC bodied individuals, identifying individuals, to to carve out spaces for ourselves and to demand that we are not only acknowledged but respected. And we could talk a lot about that because it's still that like patriarchal ass, I'm gonna just go ahead and say it, like white male tops and dominance don't often respect anybody who is not that. And so I'm really grateful for the folks who come before us and allow us to not have to deal with that. Like the mainstream patriarchy is falling. I love that. And I love being part of the destruction of that destructive way of life and way of thinking. So we'll hear from other marginalized people and other types of individuals who are very much important to the liberation of bodies. If you're new here, I will reiterate who I am, Xir Divine Rae. I recently adopted the Xir as I was presented my first leather from my sir, mentor, Sir Phoenix Black. Thank you, sir. The acknowledgement feels good. I didn't always align with leather, identify as a leather person. Again, being in these white male dominated spaces didn't really allow me to enter the lifestyle in a way that felt good to me. I didn't want to be a submissive. I am not submissive psychologically. So that didn't ever feel good to be forced into that role. I love to pleasure bottom. And really that is something that I've been expanding. The more that I get in touch with my body and my pleasure, the more I've allowed myself to experience bottoming. And the more that I've learned to value submission, the more that I've learned to value submission and honor the individuals who choose to kneel, I was able to see in the ways that I myself can be submissive. We're not all one thing. I definitely honor and submit to my goddess wife when the time aligns and when she says it with her chest, because don't tell me what to do. It's not that you can't tell me what to do, but if you're going to demand something of the God King, like you better be coming from the root of your solar plexus and really empowered, because the divinity in me will recognize the divinity in you. And if it's not delivered in a way where you don't believe it because you're not in tune with your own power, it's not going to hit. It's not going to hit. And that goes for everyone, anyone who is identifying as a dominant or a top, a D type, that which includes masters and sadists and all types of people who identify in other ways. But the left side of the slash, the power needs to come from a place of true power and not ego, because it reads different, it feels different. So at this point, I'm pushing, I want to say like over almost like 25 years of personal and professional sexual exploration within BDSM. Since 2018, I've been examining the sacred sex aspects of BDSM and really aligning with my spiritual practices and developing divine kink. Divine Rae was birthed and stepped out into the world as this version of myself in 2018. And I have been immersed in my own studies of tantric practices and just metaphysics. I'm a mystic. And in 2016 is kind of when I stopped battling my spirituality and my sexuality and allowed them to exist where they may, which is how we got here. I started developing a modality that I would lovingly call divine kink, and I would find ways to bring spiritual and magical practices into my personal play, into my professional work, my sessions became more aligned. Like I still do the hot and heavy, down and dirty. I still do the fetish and the degradation consensually when it's asked and called for. But I'm most aligned with the work that allows me to do both. Like I am a multifaceted being and I prefer to stay actualized by not depriving myself or denying myself the ability to bring my sexuality into my spirituality and vice versa. And not every spiritual practice calls for sexuality, but there, in my opinion, in my understanding and learning and knowledge and knowing, there's no separation from creation. There's no, oh, God is everything but sex, you know? There's no, oh, the universe creates everything but not your lust. Obviously, there's opportunities for people to abuse their sexual power and their sexual magic. This is not what divine kink is. That's not what we practice here. And so being hypersexualized is definitely not the way. I know people want to hear about Dark Haven. If you are listening now, you may have missed the first instance of that experience where, as I record now, sitting here, it's kind of like time warp. We will be closing, well, we will have closed December 31st to, look for another space that's more sustainable. But I'm starting at the end after several years of just daydreaming and talking about, what we would do. I closed down my first private studio, which was based in East Point, and I was devastated. The plumbing had went completely wrong, and it was just a lot to maintain. The building was really old. The plumbing needed to be updated. The property owners were not really trying to hear that. So I had to make a move. And I spent about a year in grieving, release, growth, healing. And during that time, I occasionally did events, a little private pop-up play parties, but I mostly focused on my spiritual practices. And at that time, I was also falling head over heels in love and working through the shadow period of a new relationship with um, my my now wife, and just allowed life to take me, knowing that my path was still there, and knowing that one day I would and still do need, desire, in the long term, a retreat center, a home, some land. I want to be on land, but I knew I needed a space and a stepping stone to get there. So flash forward to conversations with Madam Bunny and I planning the Halloween party of the year here in Atlanta. And when it came time to look for places and spaces to host this event, the cost was just atrocious to rent for one event, and our champagne tastes. It was just money we did not want to spend on a one-off event. And I had received a vision about a church, but the church was ours. And I shared this vision, and the search began for a long-term place that we could call our home. House Inlay headed by Madam Bunny Black, and House of Rae, led by myself. And the Inlay Rae Projects was born to parent company, excuse me, to parent what would later become Dark Haven ATL. We actually found the space the day after I had given up the search. Madam Bunny was relentless in the pursuit, and while I was working as a event director for a very well-known venue here in Atlanta. She was checking out places and happened to find on Facebook Marketplace our current building, and she picked me up from work. We came, we walked through, and when we felt the space, it was just, we knew that it would take a lot of work to get it to the level of comfort and beauty that only two Venus ruled individuals can bring, right? So we signed the lease like within the following days. Like we gave a deposit to hold, he stopped showing it, and then within the couple days that we were waiting to get the keys, and I think he was dealing with an eviction or getting people out, and just waiting on that final court order, and finally he just gave us permission. So we had like maybe 6 weeks to rehab this building that had been kind of neglected in maintenance, and we beautified the space and repaired what we could, and it was on. And, but over the course of one, standing in my truth, sharing my receipts, and getting an apology from one of the main organizations who handles reporting, I've like just put magic around myself in the building, and I didn't want anyone here who could be so easily swayed and irresponsibly following just like rumors with no research. And later this season, we'll talk more about consent and accountability, and the experiences that I had have kind of led me on a path of learning restorative justice. And I've been a mediator to help people who have fallen out of community be welcomed back, and help groups set guidelines and standards. But there was none of that for me. So there was no compassion in the ways that people allowed, like these rumors. And there still are people who would rather the tea than the truth. So my heart goes to them, and I hope that people learn how to hold space and keep their communities safer by moving in truth and love, and not throwing away, because fuck cancel culture, right? Anyway, it was an emotionally fucking trying ass time. We pushed past all of that, had our grand opening, and have been blessed and supported by people who I hold in high esteem, and have been loved and have been supported. We bring experiences that are unheard of, unseen, and we've been focusing on education and play and art creation. Our beautiful gallery was handcrafted by a Black artisan who really listened to what we wanted, and worked like 40-hour weeks to bring our gallery to life. And I will never forget the experience and the joy of just being able to bring this to life. Um, People ask, like, how did you do it, and where did the funding come from? And honestly, it was generous property who made tributes and donations, who supported us and allowed us to focus on our business and to plan events, and then the business was able to kind of sustain itself. The reason that we're closing is because the landlord, in his haste to rent the building, did not disclose, and actually flat out fucking lied about some of the things that the building needed, the roof being one of them. And so at a certain point, it became um, stupid to keep putting money into a building we did not own. And we approached him about, owner financing the building and a sale. But it's one of those situations where I think greed is overshadowing the ability. So at this point, we have 3,800 square feet, and that amount of space is a luxury to have. And we could host about 199 people legally, the fire limit. But I'm not really comfortable with more than 100 people in the building. Our art nights, our gallery nights have been, I fucking love it here. I just recently had a body sushi night where we used Nayatamari. I had about 6 or 7 beautiful models, and my VIPs got personal human platters, and we had a community platter and some art, some erotic art happening, some music happening. I myself and my goddess performed a lovely suspension and partial mummification and some impact. And it was just great. We had that first year of like people just getting to know us. And the bittersweet part about it is that like we reached that first year hump where like more and more people have discovered us, right? And we over the months we watched our attendance kind of peak, and especially like when we're on top of our marketing and when we get our newsletters out on time, etc. But the brand Dark Haven means so much to lots of people, but from my experience, for Black Kinksters, Dark Haven is the only current co-Black owned space or Black co-owned space, queer owned space, woman bodied owned space. We can go into trans, POC, all the margins. Like Dark Haven stands alone in that, and that is why like we must come back in some way, shape, or form. I did learn a lot of lessons about building teams and about the support that it really takes to have a dungeon, to have a dungeon space. So I truly commend people who have the desire and capacity to hold space at all, but to own a dungeon where you kind of become enslaved to that building. People warned us. We did the research. We took a class um, on how to open a dungeon at Leather Leadership Community, and we knew it wasn't all about. It's not a financial kind of gain thing for me, but I knew that I could. I'm a master marketer. I feel like, well, always learning, but I feel like I had experience with events. I have a following, a network, and I wasn't worried about that part. And in all honesty, if it weren't for like the maintenance and the overhead of such a big building, um, the maintenance being the main thing, because we are kind of spending so much to stay functional because of the neglect that the building has kind of experienced. And we're coming in where this building probably needs to be demolished. It's not that bad, but um, I'm not sad about the potential to be in a more sustainable building because I'm thinking long term, and I want freedom. I want to be able to travel. I want other kink stewards and stewardesses to be able to co-op the space and to get their art and do their practices and build our community and our siblinghood of working dominance. And we've set the foundation for that. So no matter what happens with Dark Haven, because I'm taking a month off. January is all about rejuvenation and reflection before I step forward in another way to open another community space. I'm going to take these lessons that I have gained experience from here and do better, do differently. But I will never forget the magic. This place is so fucking magical. Like, I just love it here. I'll see if I can do a tour and put it in this episode. So I really want to emphasize the community. We had an Aftercare Sundays, which is a Divine Kink Academy event, and that will continue. Even in our interim, there are certain events that like must live on for the community's sake. But our community care days, we had a giant cuddle puddle. We had health and wellness vendors. We have practitioners on site for one-on-one experiences. We had the most amazing brunch from Diva Chef Danny whose pantry to plate company like really kept us fed. My goddess Mo would lead clothing optional yoga. I would end the ceremony or the day with breath and sound meditations, sound bowls. We had other sound practitioners come out and join us in this work, and things were just really beautiful. They still are. I really appreciate what we've done here. I want to emphasize the importance of community healing. Like we all talk about like individual healing, self-care, self-work, but sometimes community care is that additional push. Just because you're taking solitude doesn't mean that you're necessarily healing. Some people take solitude for a lack of community. And I always wanted to be that space and that welcoming party and helping people reintegrate into community, even when they've been ousted or thrown away by people for whatever sins they may have committed. I'm really about how do we set standards and re-educate people and welcome them back and set guidelines for them to follow. You'll hear a lot more about that this season, and not just the kink and the hot shit, And I'm looking forward to talking about entheogenic medicine, plant medicine, talking about metaphysics and spirituality and sex magic and hexing the motherfucking patriarchy. It's actually a book that I'm going to touch on, but we've actually been in practice with sex hex, which is kind of like community justice, or excuse me, restorative justice and revolutionary sex magic and sending energy and protection to marginalized people. We did a Free Them All with the Mars stellium that passed in November 23. And that group kind of is forming into a more long-term community of people who are revolutionary and want to use their sex magic in social justice ways. So I look forward to seeing you sharing about kinks that you may not have heard about or may not have experienced, and just delving into things that um, are not so common and popular, because we don't like to yuck anyone's yum over here. No. Even if it's not our kink, we want to hold compassion and understanding for people and allow people to experience their pleasures without our judgment, because the things we judge in others is really just about ourselves. And not saying that like, oh, you really desire to get pissed on if you're hating on someone who loves golden showers, but what in you is resisting someone else's ability to like experience pleasure in their own way. I do want to send a personal call to action. If you have questions that you would like to have answered in our Ask a Dom section, you can send those questions to dirtydivinepod@gmail.com. We're also on Instagram now for the show. It's at Dirty Divine Pod. And you can always join us at the divinekinkacademy.com. We have courses there. We have our yearly Cosmic Connection retreat. We have a lineup of curriculum coming for 2024 and moving forward. So I'm really grateful that you're here with me. I want to extend so much love and pleasure and power to those who continue to support me. I want to welcome those who are new to the space and invite you to tap into both your dirty and your divine. I'll see y'all next time. Peace.